Michelle, it's our pleasure to have you introduce our guest.
Good afternoon. Today's guest speaker, Michael Sanford, is the Associate General Manager for Production at PBS KVIE. Having spent 40 years in television news and production, he observes that the media landscape is undergoing a profound and rapid change. Mr. Sanford's reporting has taken him to Europe, as well as Vietnam, Thailand, and Malaysia, to name a few. He has also produced television segments for CNN, the Discovery Channel, and the Travel Channel. Mr. Sanford also has been awarded 3 regional Northern California Emmys for his work on his programs. Please join me in welcoming Michael Sanford.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Deborah. Welcome, everybody. There's a little bit of a family connection between Michelle and I. I actually have worked with her brother for over 30 years in 2 different jobs. We both used to be travel reporters for a company called News Travel Network out of San Francisco. We created consumer travel reports, which local newscasts used. And Jim and I traveled all over the world, including Malaysia, which you mentioned. And then when I came to work at PBS KVIE in 2005, it was to launch America's Heartland, which I hope you're all familiar with. It's our national series on agriculture. A round of applause. I like that. Thank you. By the way, we just finished our 18th season. We've done over 1,000 stories, over 260 half-hour episodes. And even today, about 95% of all PBS stations in the country carry it, which was pretty surprising when you consider when we first launched it in 2005, people were saying, this is a farm show. My viewers aren't farmers. And what we explained to them is that this is a series that consumers will care about. They want to know where their food, fuel, and fiber comes from. They want to know that American farmers, most of whom are still family farms, share the same values that they have: sustainability, animal welfare, food safety. So that series has really helped reconnect consumers to farmers. And Jim Finnerty, Michelle's brother, was the person I hired to produce the first few seasons, and he did a fantastic job. So we love Jim. He's off on other projects now, but we always welcome him to help create our great content for PBS. It really is a pleasure for me to be here to talk about the future of public media in an incredibly changing world. I think a lot of us here are about my age, and do you all remember when television used to be 3 networks? ABC, CBS, NBC. There might have been an independent station somewhere. In Fresno, where I grew up and where I worked in my first jobs, I worked for ABC and NBC. The CBS station was the strongest in town. We had an independent that became a Fox channel. And then, of course, we had Univision. And when you wanted to watch a program or a newscast, you had to tune in right at that time. Try explaining that to kids today, or even not just kids, young adults. It's remarkable. The idea of on-demand content was something that I don't think I could have fully imagined. Probably most of us never could have imagined it, but here it is. And what do traditional broadcasters do to counter that profound change? That's what we're going to talk about today. No, that's one of the last ones.
I think when we were messing around with that, looking at that slideshow, we viewed it to the wrong.
Yeah, the first one's just that. The first one just, oh, why does it keep doing that? It defaults to a later one. All right. Well, we get that figured out. Basically, public media, PBS, National Public Radio, especially PBS KVIE here in Northern California, digital platforms, shifting viewer habits, increasing competition. As I mentioned just a second ago, it's really put us at a crossroads. Just to give you all a little bit of history, and I'm sure many of you witnessed this, PBS dates back to 1969. It was created by Congress under President Lyndon Johnson to provide educational, informational, and cultural programming to the American public. It was focused as a response to the growing desire, appetite, need for non-commercial broadcasting alternatives. I think people could see the way the commercial television was going, and they said, we need something else. And of course, even today, PBS is known for incredibly good programs: Sesame Street, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, Frontline, PBS NewsHour, and let's not forget Ken Burns. By the way, he's got a new one coming up, Leonardo da Vinci. Make sure you tune in. You know, we've really also been a critical element in children's education with PBS Kids programming. And you may not know this, but here in the Northern California area, KVIE actually has 4 channel streams. We have our primary channel, where you get most of your favorite shows. You have KVIE 2, where you can watch an alternative programming. If you don't want to watch history on our main channel, you can watch a cooking show or something else. We have the World Channel, which originates out of Boston, and that's really international. And by the way, America's Heartland airs on the World Channel, which is kind of cool. And we have PBS Kids programming 24/7. So we're really proud of all that. And we're 75 years in. Okay, let's get off my introductory slide and go to this one. And it worked. All right. You don't need me to tell you how viewing habits have changed. You see it in how you watch, and you see it in how others do too. Broadcast used to be the only way to watch television. There was a handful of channels. You needed an antenna. That was it. Cable and satellite began. People started taking down their antennas when they started paying for television. Remember when television was free? I pay about $140 a month, and I don't have that many streaming services or anything. It's crazy, but that includes my internet. Now, if you look at this, streaming is how people are watching today. Broadcast is smaller than streaming. Cable, a lot of us still have cable. And then other things are just various other aspects and ways to get it. What you see here is a snapshot from November 2023, but it's still accurate today, and maybe the numbers may have shifted a little bit more. This is mostly satellite, by the way. YouTube is the #1 way that people are watching a streamed video service. You can get YouTube TV now. You're watching live TV through streaming, through YouTube. #1 streamed video service. Well, Netflix is the #1 programmatic streaming service. That means on demand. You pick out what you want to watch and you watch it. It accounts for half of all internet use during the prime time hours of 8 to 11 p.m. That's still the sweet spot for advertisers. It's still the sweet spot as to when most of us watch. Now, broadcast in November, when this sample was taken, has actually went up compared to some other months. That has to do with the NFL football season, for reasons we'll touch on in the next slide. But as you can see, the television world has changed. You could say it's Netflix's world and we're all just living in it. All right. 23. Yeah, got it. This is just a little more to show how viewers access the content they watch. It's cable plus satellite. That's this one here. Broadband only. That's this one here. The streaming services that we talked about. And then over the air. That's antenna. This is September 2021, 22, and 23. Look how much broadband has grown. Look how much broadcast has stayed about the same. And look how much cable plus satellite has dropped. You've heard about cord cutting. These are the people that are dropping cable and satellite. You may be among them. They're moving to broadband, and you can see that that market share continues to go down. It's only going to get worse for cable and satellite because there's also such a thing among younger viewers. It's called cord nevers. They have never subscribed to a satellite service or a cable service. They moved into their new homes or apartments after living at home where there might have been those options, and they didn't call the cable or satellite company to hook up TV service. These are the people that also don't know what a landline phone is. And Verizon keeps trying to get me to get a landline phone, and I keep saying, why? I don't need it. Although when, the internet goes out, Yeah, it's kind of tough. All right. But younger people do not understand what long distance charges are either. That's something we can all remember. On the antenna side, you can see it's fairly flat. For us as a broadcaster, though, it shows how much our world has changed because it used to be 100%, right? We're seeing a slight uptick after a drop to about 10%. And that has to do with the technical superiority of the broadcast signal. Some homes are using both antenna and broadband. They're streaming a lot of their services, but they still have an antenna. And I don't know if you've shopped for antennas recently, but they're small ones you can put right inside your house and get a fantastic signal. It's a beautiful signal. And it's also fun for things like NFL games. The other thing is, if you're one of those people that bets on sports live, you want an antenna because there's a lag with cable and satellite. And if you're betting that somebody's going to throw a touchdown pass and you're about 5 seconds late, you're probably going to lose that bet. Or other people are going to get it right in front of you. So, but we don't do that kind of stuff here. All right. To show a little bit more about where the future is going, you can see how broadband only, that's the gray line, has increased so dramatically. It's projected to be almost 80% in just a couple of years. The today on this graph, again, it's a little bit old, about 10, 11 months, but it's changed. But this is probably our most accurate representation of where things are. And you can certainly see the trend lines. Cable and satellite that represented half of all TV viewing back in 2018 is projected to be less than 10% in a couple of years. We've already seen that with some companies, including Consolidated Communications, announcing they are no longer providing TV service and will only offer internet connections. And you may have noticed just about, a week ago or less, the two major satellite providers, Dish and DirecTV, they merged. DirecTV is paying $1 for Dish, but they have to assume Dish's $10 billion company debt. $10 billion. So if you have satellite now and you enjoy it, keep your eyes out because it could be gone completely before too long. All right. So what happened to legacy media? We've talked about how people watch TV. Now let's look at something that's we're part of that's called legacy media, and that's the national and local newspapers, radios, and television stations that you all know about. The digital age that we're in now has affected legacy media greatly because it's made content obviously easier to get, more targeted, and interactive. Targeted is the key word here. There's no more waiting for the end of the newscast to find out if you need an umbrella tomorrow. There's no need to wait to find out if your favorite sports team won or lost. It's just something you can bring up on demand anytime on so many platforms. There's no radio option for your car anymore. The ability to watch what you want when you want on TV. The Netflix algorithm, which probably a lot of you have Netflix, it's so good that they've discovered that you can put it on at 6 o'clock in the evening. Chances are you'll still be watching something on there by the time you go to bed because it just knows exactly what you like. It continues to give you option. For live television, it's not dead. We don't think it will be dead. But what people tend to watch now is sports, breaking news, and major weather events. Look how critical it was in Florida these last few weeks and the rest of the East Coast. And as sports are migrating to streaming and you have to pay for them, there may not be much more reason for anyone to watch live television on broadcast cable or satellite. And we're talking about mostly entertainment and other types of information that we used to watch traditionally at a particular hour, what we called appointment television. So what does this mean for everyone else? Here's some sobering examples. McClatchy, you all know McClatchy. They own the Sacramento Bee and many other newspapers. They had a market cap of $24 billion in 2005. 15 years later, bankrupt. Now they're held by a hedge fund. They're not dead. They still provide a service. They're still important, but they need to adopt the new digital age business models and get their content out in other ways. They have to monetize their readers through advertising online, and they have to look at offering different content. Just think about the New York Times. Any of you subscribe to New York Times Online? Still a viable, interesting service. To me, it's really worth the money. iHeartMedia, radio. They own radio stations across the country, including KFBK right here in this region. They were worth $4 billion in 2021. But look what happened with COVID. People stopped driving as much. They stopped listening to radio stations in their cars. Look at the drop in their valuation. People went to Spotify if they wanted music. They went elsewhere when they wanted other information. They're not coming back to that level of revenue, and their values dropped considerably. Okay, let's look at a couple of companies that went up against legacy media as new organizations that started as all digital. They never had a broadcast presence. They just started as a digital alternative, kind of sensing the direction we were all going in our consumption of media. Both Vice and BuzzFeed had tremendous market values when they started. Vice is now bankrupt, and BuzzFeed is a shell of its former self. They were originally digital media darlings, but they struggled to retain that initial success. They both focused on viral content. Something is cool, let's share it. Oh my gosh, everyone's watching it, it goes viral. They were catering to millennial tastes, but they didn't age well as audiences evolved. That's the thing. Our audiences, not only are we getting more and more people growing up and consuming media, all of our tastes are changing as we go through different stages in our lives. They didn't have sustainable business models because they depended almost solely on advertising. And there was a decline in their digital ad revenue as more digital options became available. But there is one example of how a digital-only company has fared. Reddit was bought in 2006 by Condé Nast for $10 million. And after an IPO this year, it's worth $7 billion. Reddit, I don't watch Reddit. Do you watch Reddit? A lot of other people do. How do they do it? Well, they focus on user-driven content that fosters a sense of community and provides more perspectives. They don't create all the content and put it out there for people to consume or reject. A lot of it comes from the users themselves. They focus on discussion with their upvoting and downvoting, which is different from the top-down approach. Here, take a look at this. Oh, you don't like it. Oh, well. And they cater to more diverse communities with subreddits or specific interests, fostering a more niche and passionate user base. So examples, that's the Reddit. So you can see the difference between the different approaches to a business model. Okay. So I already touched on Reddit. Good example of media companies today, whether they're existing legacy ones or new startups. This is where they need to go to embrace digital platforms by expanding their presence to reach wider audiences. YouTube, as you saw earlier, is the most streamed of all. And the younger the generation, the more apt to say it's the one TV network. That's what they're calling it. They're calling it a network that they can't live without. If you are a media company and you don't have your stuff on YouTube, which thankfully we do, America's Heartland has its own YouTube channel with like 34 million views. Thank goodness. If you don't have that, you do so at your own peril. It's also about engaging with social media and really extending the media service. This is what public media, in fact, all legacy media needs to do. As I mentioned with Reddit, it's about serving various communities. Dare I say all communities. Media companies need to lean in and provide deeper connections, especially in person. We like to say that Netflix would love to have what we have at PBS, the ability to interact with people in person. We're not a faceless company. We can build real relationships. We're local media. Innovation is also key. Companies need to try different ways to present their media. That could be shifting focus a little or acquiring new startups. We talk about news deserts. You're probably familiar with that term. There's a lot of parts of the country where local news simply isn't being covered. As so many media companies, legacy media companies, have had to cut back. We get an online magazine called Current, which is designed to serve public media, PBS, NPR. And there's not an edition that comes out where we don't see layoffs at public media stations, innovative programs launched by a PBS station here or there that had to cut back and eliminate. And this is true across commercial networks too. I think I just read that, I don't know, one of the network affiliates just laid off 20 people in New York. I mean, this is happening all the time. There have been thousands and thousands of cutbacks across traditional media platforms, and that's probably going to continue. And what that leads to is an inability for journalists to cover local news. What happens when we don't cover local news anymore? People get away with stuff. Trends happen that are not captured by that community and analyzed and discussed. I mean, I don't even have to go into detail for you to certainly understand that a lack of a local media presence, especially a news media presence, is not good for any community. As we see more of those new deserts existing, and new companies need to look at how to fill the gaps left behind. And this is the transition in my discussion from the bad news to what we could possibly do in the future to make things better. For example, KPBS in San Diego, it's a really good PBS station. They do a lot of local news. They do a lot of originated content that they create themselves. They saw the last local news radio station go away. They changed formats. And they said, well, we're a PBS television station primarily, but there's a news desert in San Diego of all places. So they were very concerned about it. They filled the void. They established a radio news presence. It's a huge commitment. Fortunately, it's a very robust station. It's well supported, just like all of you support PBS KVIE here in Sacramento. Now, other public media stations may not be able to do that, but they can certainly look at their own communities and see what void might exist in local news that's not currently being served. Legacy media companies are also known as being in mass media. We all grew up with this phrase, mass media. Mass media is the notion of trying to reach everyone with all the news information. It's why Sports Illustrated and Sporting News are no longer as relevant as they used to be. No one subscribed to Sports Illustrated because they were all-encompassing sports fans. I used to subscribe to Sports Illustrated, and I would try to read it all the way through. I just couldn't do it. I didn't care about that sport or that sport. I wanted to know how my Giants were doing and how my 49ers were doing and what their perspectives were on that. And yes, there was great writing there. I mean, some of the best writing I've ever seen in sports was in Sports Illustrated, but it was an one-size-fits-all approach, and people don't want that anymore. They've trained themselves to be looking for specific items of interest to them. Anybody who subscribed to Sports Illustrated in this region probably wanted to know what they thought about the Sacramento Kings, or even just basketball. But they didn't need the soccer stories or college football stories. It's about individualized media now, where you can get exactly what you want and just that. Mass media, again, the big broadcasters, also needs to understand that it's not in business to serve the masses with a one-size-fits-all message, but to serve a mass of niches. We need to reach many small and specific audiences we care about with particular topics, communities, or even schools of thought. And that, I think, is where the future of journalism is. It has to go beyond geographic boundaries. You might be in a community, but maybe not made of a physical location. It could be a community of politics, or having school-age children, or being a certain ethnicity. The notions of communities just being within a region is not really what works today. These notions of communities now have an almost infinite number of ways to be of service. So now it's time to talk a little bit more about KVIE. We're one of over 300 PBS stations serving everyone in America, as you know, as a nonprofit organization. We first went on the air in 1959 as one of the first public television stations in California. That was 10 years before PBS was established as a national entity. If you really go back, it used to be called National Educational Television, and was probably the equivalent of what cable access is today, you know, a small, powerful station trying hard and putting in very eclectic programming, which is kind of what PBS does today. But it has become a vital resource for local programming that informs, educates, and entertains the community. At KVIE, we think we don't have a lot of interest in doing a daily newscast. We feel like the network affiliates do a pretty good job. I attend the Northern California Emmys every year, where they have a lot of categories. Sometimes we win awards for some of our documentaries, which is great, but we don't compete in the news department. I'll tell you, many years, the winner of the best newscasts in all of Northern California, which includes Fresno, Redding, even Hawaii, and San Francisco, is a Sacramento station. I think they do a nice job, and it's acknowledged by the industry. So we don't feel like we have to compete. What we try to do at PBS is to drill down more, to spend more time, to be thoughtful, to open up the discussion beyond a 3 or 4 minute story, to have a half an hour or an hour to really explore history, health, science, civic issues. As a loyal viewer, as I'm sure you all are, you probably know about our commitment to creating local, regional, and even national programming. You all have watched Rob on the Road, yes? Studio Sacramento, Inside California Education, which is a statewide series on public education. We're just launching our 6th season. KVIE Art Showcase, which has been a great way to really spotlight artists in our region. We just finished our art auction. I'm sure you all bought some art. Thank you. But we have this great arrangement in our arts programming where the major market PBS stations all create arts content, right? We all send it to each other. And so we are able to create a weekly arts show that always starts out with a local artist. And then we take a great art story from Dallas and one from Chicago and one from Florida. And at the same time, our local artist story ends up on arts programming all over the country. So it's just a win-win, and it's a great way to really honor the amazing artists that we have throughout our region. But in many cases, we are the last remaining media in service directly to the community that is locally owned, locally managed, and locally governed. Again, I'm not going to disparage the other network affiliates. They do a good job, but they're not owned locally. They're owned by big media conglomerates. Thankfully, some of them still have a big commitment to news, and we like that. But there are others in other parts of the country that do not. Surveys over the last 20 years show that PBS is still one of the most trusted brands in America and one of the best uses of your tax dollars. And it does that through your financial support, which of course is voluntary and much appreciated, and through your taxes, which is not exactly voluntary. It's also appreciated. But let me remind you, it's only 0.1% of the federal budget, and it works out to about $1.35 per American taxpayer. So is that okay? You guys okay still do? All right. All right. And of course, every year in Congress, there is an effort to defund public media. So your letters to your local congressperson are very much appreciated. Okay. One of my favorite albums. We're using that to launch into this idea of who are we? We have long said, even before the digital age, that television isn't what we do specifically, it's just how we do it. KVIE sees itself as 3 very important things for those we serve. We're a beacon of information, we're a champion of the community, and we're a nurturer of children. We do take that role seriously, and we're proud to be the home of news programs like PBS NewsHour and Frontline, which, by the way, Frontline just won an Academy Award for that film 20 Days in Mariupol. I don't know if you've seen it. powerful documentary about the situation in Ukraine. As champion of the community, we are unabashed boosters for the Sacramento region. And we actually have one of the largest geographic footprints, or the Sacramento market is one of the largest geographic television areas in the country. We actually serve 18 counties, but we can be seen in 28 of California's 53 counties. There are people in Marin County who watch us because they like us better than KQED. Not a lot, but a few. They point their satellite dish towards us. That's fine. We think it's important for everyone, new residents and longstanding, to know what our history is, why we are who we are, and where we're going. It doesn't mean that we shy away from issues. We look at to see how we can be better going forward. As a nurturer of children, we are the area's largest preschool. All of our kids' shows and digital educational games are rooted in curriculum designed to teach good reading and math skills, social skills, and so much more. I've mentioned needing to shift, and we've done just that. While kids still watch our shows on live television, they do it primarily on their own time, watching just the shows they want. We have a very robust PBS Kids app that kids can, you know how kids can use their computers now. That's so easy for them. It's a mystery to me and a lot of people, but they can bring up their show anytime they want. Their mobile devices, the use of interacting learning games created by PBS is very heavily used. And this way, their learning is tailored to their individual needs. So, okay, at the start of the presentation, I showed you how differently people now watch. This is the look going back 7 years that shows the age of the PBS primetime audience. We're losing the younger viewers that we had. And to be clear, by younger, I mean 50 to 64. Very old, very young. That's been the bulk of our viewership. PBS is different. It always has been. You know, while it existed up against NBC, CBS, ABC, it was created to be an alternative to the commercialized content. That's not what everyone wants. We get it. We're never going to compete with Dancing with the Stars in terms of sheer audience numbers. But we find that people who are engaged in their community, we've done lots of demographic studies about PBS viewers. They're educated, they're engaged in their community, they care about where they live. People 50 plus, when they're done raising kids and they have more time, their curiosity, they can address their curiosity about the world, about history, about their community, and they often do it through PBS. But you'll see that the percentage of our live primetime audience has shifted more and more to 65 plus. Older viewers tend to stay with us, and they stay with the same technology, which is live television. As others go to streaming, they're still in our live audience. 76% of our primetime audience is now over the age of 65. So a lot of us are figuring out streaming. Not as robustly as obviously younger people, but we're getting it. And we're discovering the advantages of being able to say, I want to binge Antiques Roadshow. Which, by the way, when we have daily Nielsen reports, and almost every week, one of the highest watched television markets for Antiques Roadshow is right here in Sacramento. Do y'all remember when we had that event at the Crocker Museum a few years ago? Yeah, they actually came out and people had some amazing stuff that ended up being featured on the show. All right, but Michael, you ask, doesn't that alarm you? People getting older. Well, of course, we don't want to lose our viewers. I mentioned the need to adapt, and we have. Do you all have the PBS app? I hope you do. It's free, and it allows you to watch anything you want, anytime you want, not just from us, but any PBS station in the country. Free access to an incredibly rich library. We think that our library is nearly as good as, if not as good as, what Netflix offers. It's just so diverse, and it's designed for all ages of viewers, all technologies. So while we acknowledge that those who tune in to what we call live linear television, live TV, tend to be 65 plus, we still reach all ages in the streaming environment. Thank goodness. What's key to us now is to get the PBS streaming service known to those who might only be using Netflix. We have plenty of content. Content's not the problem, it's distribution and making people aware of it. How do we reach people who don't know about our app when there are almost an infinite number of choices of things to watch? We are in a complex environment, but this is another golden age of television. I mean, there's so much more out there. Highly produced content. It's available everywhere, anytime. It's just a matter of finding it, helping you find it, and making sure that you can access it. If you're like me, if you have a number of shows already on your to your watch list, and when someone says there's a new show you need to watch, you're almost hesitant to listen to them because, oh my gosh, my list is so long. I got to add this. This happens at home all the time. Oh, do I have to subscribe to Hulu to watch this, and then I'll cancel it, and then I'll subscribe to Apple Plus to watch that? No wonder my bill's so high. All right. So before we put a coffin in the nail of broadcast television, a little side note here. I should mention something called ATSC 3.0 or Next Gen TV. Sounds very technical, but it's available in some parts of the country and it continues to roll out. If you thought high definition TV was cool when it first came out a few years ago, Ultra HD, or sometimes called 4K TV, is an almost realistic experience. There's also better sound. There used to be mono only sound, meaning all sound came from the equivalent of one speaker. Then it was mixed into stereo, so you could hear different things coming from the right or left. With 5.1, which literally means 5 speakers and a subwoofer, sound came from a left speaker, a middle speaker, a right speaker, and 2 side speakers for a more immersive experience. So now guess what's coming? 7.1 adds 2 speakers behind you. And you say, well, who's going to want to buy 2 speakers to put behind me? I don't want to buy 7 speakers. No, there are devices from Dolby Labs. They'll create 7.1 sound, all that in one speaker in front of the TV. We know of engineers who've sat in on demos and they've heard a voice behind them and they look around for a speaker behind them. It's not there. It's in front, but it creates the illusion that it's behind them. So if you like great sound, I have one sound bar on my TV and it's like, turn it up, right? Or I have to put on closed captioning so I can hear what they're saying. Ever watch British programs? Oh my gosh. Figure out how to put on closed captioning, because otherwise you'll miss half the dialogue, right? I mean, I love British programs, but gosh, sometimes it's a different language. Okay, so, but Next Gen TV will offer the ability for the sound to be controlled by you. Is the music behind the actors too loud? You can turn that down. Is the symphony playing and you really like the oboe? You can turn that up. With the better picture and sound quality, that's going to come too. It's the ability to receive data that will be transmitted simultaneously with all that great sound and picture. Watching your favorite baseball player, you can put up real-time stats or look at how he does against left-handed pitchers. It's all coming. And this is all available free with an antenna. So if you've got an antenna, stand by, you know. You might be able to, and it'll eventually come out on other formats as well. But this is where true live broadcast still has the potential to dazzle you. All right, big local. I mentioned the need to shift, to look at new ways we can be of service to the community. We're looking at now how we can provide more information beyond TV in the areas where we think we have major competence and history. We want to explore that with the region, which means all of you. We call it our big local strategy. We don't have the resources to focus on too many niche areas. We're looking at what needs we can fulfill in 6 key areas and try to do it exceedingly well. No longer can we afford to create just the 30-minute programs. That's the world I came from. 30-minute documentaries, 1-hour documentaries. That's not what people necessarily always want to watch. Some people want to watch a 5-minute video or a 30-second TikTok. Maybe it's an interactive map of the Sacramento area that includes all the history information that we have in video or written form. Our producers need to think about what people want in the ways they want. As your needs and tastes change, we have to be responsive to that. So here's our working make or break strategy as a public media station. If we identify one thing that we do well, we'll move our organization forward, we'll succeed. Our focus needs to be on it, and we'll create strategies and tactics around it. We've chosen engagement. We already have an experience for you through programming, but we need to be more experiential. What does that mean? More streaming, more interactions on social media, more views of blog posts, more events and attendance. We have a lot of events at KVIE, and we just really enjoy. We have live people, our viewers coming in where we can meet them, and they can see that we're real and that we care about their interests and needs. The more of that we can do, the better. All while still focusing on our live TV viewers who love our content. Let's think about the history of KVIE and all PBS stations. We've weathered a lot of past shifts in the media. Cable was supposed to take us out. And there were channels designed solely to do that. The Learning Channel, the History Channel. What do you see on those channels now? Pretty tacky programming. It's not history, most of it. It's not learning. I don't think TLC even calls itself the Learning Channel anymore. They tried to exist and compete with us, but the demands of the commercial marketplace just forced them out. They couldn't afford to put the resources into creating the kind of quality content that PBS does. Bravo was supposed to be the best in performing arts and now is only known for reality TV, which we all know there's not much that's real in reality TV, right? I say all this not just because I'm focused on having KVIE survive, but rather thrive. And we can do that by, instead of answering to Wall Street, which these commercial stations do, we answer to Main Street. That's the key. Okay, so in a nutshell, our areas of focus in the coming fiscal year, largely unchanged from our core mission, but modified to recognize and address the new media realities I've shared with you. We want to continue serving the community's ongoing legacy needs, its interest in history, its interest in civic issues, the arts, and so forth. But we have to discover new things and tackle them. We need to engage with more diverse communities throughout our region. We hope to do that while still sharing our popular legacy, local, regional, and national programs. We've talked about the economic challenges. We need to navigate the challenges that all media is facing. How do we monetize our content, make it meaningful, relevant, and essential reading and viewing? Membership is still a big part of our revenue stream. Legacy gifts, bequests, these are all great. But we have to figure out ways to ensure that your support for us meets the needs so we can turn around and support you. There's no turning back. Digital is everywhere. We have to be there too, but we can't abandon television, even as we continue to evolve into these other platforms. Okay, speaking of our legacy programs, here's a little bit of dessert after the 5-course information meal I just served you. It's just a 2-minute video look at some of the many programs we produce that you watch and that we are so grateful that you support with your viewership and any other ways that you do so. So let's take a look here. Just click it one more time, Chris. There you go.
Look who we are. We are the dreamers. We make it happen. Guess we believe it. Look who we are. We are the dreamers. We make it happen. Cause we can see it. Let's do the one that keep the passion. Respect. Oh yeah. Let's do the one that can imagine. Respect. Oh yeah. Look who we are. We are the dreamers. We make it happen. Guess we believe it. Look who we are. We are the dreamers. We make it happen. Cause we can see it. Let's do the one that keep the passion. Respect. Oh yeah. Let's do the one that can imagine. the dreamers, we make it happen. Guess we believe it. Look who we are the dreamers, we make it happen. Cause we can see it. Here's to the one that keep the passion, respect. Oh yeah. Here's to the one that can imagine, respect.
Thank you for supporting PBS KVIE.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Happy to open it up for questions. I think there's a roving microphone. By the way, the two finalists, Kofer and McCarty, we're doing another mayoral live forum between them on, I think, the 23rd of this month.
Questions?
There are some questions.
Start up here. I'm doing it.
Thank you, first of all, for your presentation. Currently, there seems to be a flood of misinformation, disinformation on multiple types of media. How do you engage the audience and create an appetite for authentic, ethical information as opposed to this flood of disinformation and misinformation that we're seeing?
I think that's one of the most important and fundamental questions that we all face in media today. When the equal time rule was stripped away years ago, when the guardrails around accuracy in media seemed to erode, we talk about niche programming. People seek out the niches in media that either appeal to their interests or their beliefs. And obviously, and unfortunately, I think what we've seen is there are a lot of platforms out there, both broadcast and online, where information is not vetted, it's not checked. And I honestly don't know what the answer is in terms of being able to scale that back, to reverse it. All we can do in public media is to continue to adhere to our core principles, which is accuracy and fairness. And thank goodness that I talked about that survey that showed that we're most trusted brand in America. I hear stories that during the January 6th riots that the CNN folks were in a lot of danger, but when people saw PBS crews, they said, "Oh, I like PBS. I watch PBS." So there's not a strong antipathy for what we do, because I think of the reputation we built over the many decades of being fair and accurate. I don't know if that's going to change in the future, but all we can do, I think, at this point is to continue to be truthful, to be accurate, to tell the truth. I'm so proud of programs like Frontline that really go into detail, and their investigative efforts are beyond reproach. Beyond that, I can't offer any other solution. It's just to me, it's an intractable problem now.
I've got a much simpler question. I'm just curious, when there's a national political event and I go to YouTube and I go to your channel to watch it, are the like the State of the Union or the debates or something like that, are the commentators national, regional, local? Who's providing the color?
In most cases, the commentators are national. It's the people that work for the PBS NewsHour or other sources. I don't know. There might be some other large market stations that do local cut-ins. Those tend to be the PBS stations that are in even larger markets. Sacramento is the 20th largest market. It's considered a major market, which is great because my boss, David Lowe, President GM, goes to all the major market meetings, and he really advocates for better representation in terms of community outreach and so forth. But it's often the stations like KQED, which is a dual license. They have both the NPR and the PBS licenses. So they have a really robust news presence. They have a news staff like we don't have. We have individual producers. So they're the ones that can often do local cut-ins and local broadcasts. But in terms of covering the actual convention on site, that would be PBS people at the highest level. Yes.
Yeah, thanks as always for your presentation. What is KVIE Passport and how does that fit in? I always feel guilty when I watch it. Should I or should I not?
You shouldn't feel guilty. It's kind of a challenge for us. We talked about monetizing support. We are really blessed in this region. We have over 60,000 members, which is a lot. Obviously, this is a market of, I think, 1.8 million residents. And so 60,000 may seem small, but it actually is quite, it exceeds the goal that we set years ago. And while we obviously want more, we're very happy with the support we have from people who actually contribute and subscribe. Looking at the way people were paying for streaming services, we didn't want to be like them. We didn't want to charge $20 a month for Netflix, but we wanted to try to create an incentive for folks to contribute something. So Passport is available to folks who pay $5 a month, $60 a year. So you can look at it in a way as a really inexpensive streaming service. And what it gives you is a little bit extra access to some programs. There's a handful of series and programs that you need Passport to be able to access. I'd still say the vast majority of the content that you see on television, you can still watch just online. PBS.org, KVIE.org, the PBS video app. But there's a few programs that we try to incentivize people to contribute a minimum of $5 a month to get. Passport's cool. If you think it's within your budget, I'd encourage you to give it a try.
So staying on the money side of it, you talked about not being part of Wall Street, but what about the government defunding its support of PBS? How likely is that?
Well, it's something that we have to mount campaigns every year to talk to our electeds and to our viewers and encourage them to reach out to their local Congress people. It works in a kind of funny way. Congress provides support to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which is a nonprofit entity that then distributes money to the PBS stations. We in turn turn around and pay PBS member dues. We pay to be a PBS member station. So they give us money through the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. We turn around and pay to be a member. And that happens in every market. There's a lot of PBS markets that have 2 or 3 or 4 PBS stations, like LA's got Orange County, it's got San Bernardino, it's got PBS SoCal, but we're the only one in this particular region. We're forward funded 2 years. What that means is the funding that we get in this congressional cycle, we're good for the next 2 years, but every year it comes up for renewal. And depending on the makeup of Congress, there are efforts every year to defund public media. It essentially is something that is politicized to some degree, but I think at the end of the day, when it comes down to the vote, even some folks who might otherwise be opposed to public media know that their constituents would not be happy, so they end up voting for us. We get by every year, but it's a constant concern. I won't deny that.
What question in the Zoom audience is, why isn't the civic and political area among your current 6 focus engagement areas? So the political and civic areas.
Well, I would say that it is. I mean, Studio Sacramento is really our primary forum to bring in change makers and electeds throughout our community. It took us years to get Tom McClintock to come on the show, by the way. He comes from a political viewpoint that may not have always been completely in support of public media, but he came on, he was treated fairly and with respect, and I think he's glad he did it. So we can't be as robust, I think, as even Capitol Public Radio, which I think does a great job with local news, or local political news and the goings on at the Capitol. KQED has a good presence there. We are making a general commitment in our strategic plan to increase our news coverage, our digital news presence. And we'll be talking more about that in coming months. But in terms of civic engagement, I think we do a pretty good job now with shows like Studio Sacramento, the mayoral debates that we've had, and the one that we've got coming up. And we're going to do a lot more in the coming year.
I think we're probably going to have a quick one, maybe. All right, good.
About you talked about the PBS app, which I'm not aware of. Is that something that just goes on your phone and it's only on your phone? You can watch the programs on your phone?
Yeah, you can watch them on your phone. You can watch them on your laptop.
Well, if we don't have that, we just have the.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And it's free.
Okay.
Yeah.
not aware.
PB, yeah, just go to your app store and look for PB. You'll see the PBS logo and it's free.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
All right. Thanks again, everybody.
Yes, thank you so much, Michael. This was very informative, and our audience, as you can tell, is vitally interested in local news media. So, and particularly PBS. So, thank you very much again. As a token of our appreciation, we'd like to offer you a 1-year membership in our Renaissance Society. So, I hope you can enjoy that. And we will also make a donation in your name to the Seth Nelson Emergency Grant Fund, which helps students in crisis on campus. So thank you so much again. And next week, kind of following in the civic realm, we will have 2 consultants, Steve Maviglio and Rob Stutzman. They are no strangers to Renaissance, and they will be discussing the pros and cons of the state ballot measures. So